And we're off. Hi, gang. Welcome back. It is Wednesday, November 5th, the day when NFL teams went back to business as usual with no trade deadline hovering over them, strictly preparing for the remainder of the 2025 NFL season, which for the Dolphins means finding some answers, making some decisions. Today, we're going to be discussing the new linebacker the Dolphins sign, talk about some injury concerns heading into the Week 10 matchup against the Buffalo Bills, and then a couple of Tua topics we need to address as well. Before we get into everything, right now, my daily reminder to please like, subscribe if you don't already do so, comment. Love reading the comments, and I interact with a lot of them from time to time, especially those that are done respectfully. Feel free to disagree with anything I have to say. Anything you see on the website also, please check out Miami Dolphins on SI.com. All the content is free. We're talking at least 5 every single solitary day, sometimes way more than that. And then for those who prefer getting their podcast through the audio version, the All Dolphins podcast is available wherever you find those, whether it be Google, Spotify, Apple, any of them. So let's start with the Dolphins roster move of Wednesday, filling the opening created by the trade of Jalen Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that signing was Andre Carter II, who is a third-year player out of Army, who is not, by the way, related, for those who might remember, to former NFL defensive lineman of the same name, Andre Carter, because that was the first thing I checked. I see Andre Carter and I see Andre Carter too, and it's like, oh, not related. That original Andre Carter, by the way, was a Dolphins assistant defensive line coach in 2017 and 2018 under Adam Gase. Certainly would have been quite the interesting story if they were related. But Andre Carter, too, comes from the Detroit Lions practice squad. He spent time with the Minnesota Vikings in 2022 after entering the NFL as an undrafted rookie free agent. 2023. Spent time in 2024 with the Las Vegas Raiders. His career totals include 15 games, no starts. About 2/3 of his snaps in his career have come on special teams. Been very limited playing time on the defensive side. Has half a sack in his career. That came in week 17 last year for the Las Vegas Raiders in a win against the New Orleans Saints. Now, Carter did have 16 and a half sacks. I've seen 16 and a half or 15 and a half, depending on where I've looked. I've seen both numbers. We'll give him 16 and a half because that's just how generous I am. Regardless, he had a very, very good season. There was the second highest total among the FBS ranks. That's Football Bowl Subdivision, otherwise known as Division 1A, behind Will Anderson of Alabama, the guy who became the third overall pick in the 2023 draft for the Houston Texans. Production dipped heavily as a senior in 2022 when he went down to 3.5 sacks. Injuries did play a part in that, but obviously the production massively dipped. He certainly looks the part at 6'6", 255. Attended the scouting combine. The NFL.com draft profile page on Andre Carter 2 projected him as a 5th or 6th round pick, with somebody who projected perhaps as maybe a long-term backup. Didn't pan out in terms of his draft status. Wound up going undrafted again, went to the Minnesota Vikings. And to be quite honest, it's an interesting addition for the Dolphins because they chose Carter instead of signing from the practice squad either Quentin Bell, who the Dolphins know, who played 17 games for them on the active roster all of last season, or Derek McClendon, the former Florida State dude who actually had a very good showing in training camp in the preseason, who is now on the practice squad and maybe merits a long look. I know if I'm Derek McClendon, I'm not happy about the recent developments that occurred with the signing of Carter instead of the promotion of McClendon to the active roster. And again, the Detroit Lions were a team that was seen as being on the lookout for pass rushers. If Andre Carter 2 had a very high ceiling. Why wouldn't we think that the Dolphins would have, that the Lions would have just not signed him instead of being involved in trade talks? Obviously, maybe they were looking for a bigger name, more established guy. But basically the bottom line in that signing is this looks like an attempt to find a gem, a hidden gem on somebody else's practice squad. It's the kind of move you make if you are looking at the future, which kind of, when it comes to the Dolphins, their direction of what they're doing is all over the place, because the firing or parting of the ways with GM Chris Greer suggests the Dolphins are looking big picture, keeping Mike McDaniel ostensibly through the end of the 2025 season. Screams we're looking just right now, but it also could mean they're looking big picture, because who knows if there's an arrangement in place for him to be back in 2026. There has been nothing said to that effect. But again, the Dolphins have the Tua Tagovailoa contract issue. And logically, Mike McDaniel's the one who maxed out Tua's skills the most. Certainly, to a certain degree, would make sense to see it through Tua's final year with major consequences if you move on from him, with McDaniel coaching him. So, but Andre Carter, too, looks more like a move the Dolphins would have made in 2019 when they were completely redoing the roster and picking up guys all over the place. Including, like, for example, Mac Hollins, and then obviously the most significant one that they wound up claiming off waivers or signing off somebody's practice squad, that being Zach Sealer, who they got from the Baltimore Ravens in December of 2019, who went on to become a team captain and one of the most prominent members of the defense over the past couple of years. So that's what that move kind of screams to me. How quickly Carter can get acclimated in the Dolphins system and get himself ready to play in a regular season game could be important, because the Dolphins have injury concerns at the outside linebacker position. Guess we can go in that direction. Before we go in that direction, also point out that the Dolphins on Tuesday signed a cornerback to their practice squad, that being Clarence Lewis. He's a rookie free agent, signed with the Tennessee Titans after playing at Syracuse, was among those cuts in the final cuts to 53. Hadn't hooked on with any team since then, so now he's with the Dolphin practice squad. And as I look at the injury report, Dolphins don't have major injury issues at cornerback other than one, and I guess we can move on to that, being that one of those involves a cornerback, and the most significant, I would probably say right now, that's Rasul Douglas, who we saw leave the game early against the Baltimore Ravens. He's listed with foot ankle injuries, did not participate in practice on Wednesday. Too early to say. Probably not a great idea to totally count on him being in the lineup against the Bills, with whom he played last season. And also at the outside linebacker position, Bill, going back to my point, because this is what I was talking about with Carter being able to play quickly. Bradley Chubb's still dealing with a foot injury. He's listed as limited. And then Chop Robinson is in the concussion protocol. He did not practice on Wednesday. The way Mike McDaniel spoke before practice kind of pretty much sounds like forget about Robinson playing against the Bills. More than likely the target date for him, again, assuming and hoping that he progresses through the protocol smoothly and seamlessly, would be the Washington game in Madrid, Spain, next Sunday in week 11. So now that leaves the Dolphins with 3 outside linebackers on the 53. Outside of Robinson and Chubb, who also was on the injury report last week, wound up playing against Baltimore. So there's really not major concern about him playing, although he's not playing at 100%. The other outside linebackers on the roster, of course, are Matthew Judon, the veteran, Cameron Good, the special teams ace, who's gotten some snaps on defense as well, and then the newcomer, Andre Carter, too. Then the Dolphins also could elevate either Bell or McClendon from the practice squad for the game. Bell's already had 2 elevations, I should say. A third would make him reach the maximum he can to play in a Dolphin regular season game in 2025, which means the Dolphins either would have to sign him to the 53 or basically cut him loose. Also missing practice on Wednesday, safety Ifatu Melifonwu, who, again, injured again. This was the book on him when the Dolphins signed him as a free agent from the Detroit Lions. Injuries, always an issue. Listed with thumb and foot issues. He did not practice. D. Eskridge has a shoulder injury, left the Baltimore game early. Also did not practice. And then we mentioned Chop Robinson. So those were the 4 players. If D. Eskridge can't play, Dolphins can still have 5 active wide receivers instead of having 6, which they shouldn't have had against Baltimore when they had only 2 active halfbacks, which wound up biting them a little bit at some point when Ollie Gordon, too, left the game with an ankle injury. And in case you're wondering about Gordon, he was listed as limited with his ankle injury, along with safety Ashton Davis, who didn't play against Baltimore because of the quad injury he had sustained. Good news on Julian Hill, tight end, ankle injury, back at practice. He's missed the past 2 games because of that injury. The Dolphins elevated Greg Dulcich and they signed Greg Dulcich to the 53. They elevated Hayden Rucci for the game against Baltimore. So the Dolphins have 3 tight ends on the 53 with Hill, Tanner Connor, Dulcich, and if need be, they have Hayden Rucci on the practice squad as well. Ollie Gordon, I mentioned, also limited. And the other one is Zach Sealer, who is dealing with a shoulder injury. Do not recall him seeing him getting injured against Baltimore. He was not among the players whose injuries were reported in the press box, which means either it's something that's flared up since the end of the game or he got injured in practice. Who knows where that stands? And then 4 other players were on the injury report listed as full participants. That's Minkah Fitzpatrick, Alec Ingold, Dante Trader Jr., and Jalen Waddle. You'll notice that they didn't say Tua Tagovailoa. He's off the injury report for the first time in about 3 weeks or so. After being listed, first it was thumb and hip, then it became just thumb. Now he's completely off the injury report. Buffalo has quite a list. 6 players in practice on Wednesday, including some very significant players. Joey Bosa, wrist injury. James Cook has an ankle injury. AJ Epinesa, concussion. Taron Johnson, the very good nickel corner, has a groin injury. Daquan Jones, defensive tackle, calf injury. And finally, Shaq Thompson, linebacker, has a hamstring injury. 3 more players, including 2 more starters on defense, were listed as limited, including Christian Benford, the cornerback, and then Terrell Bernard, the linebacker, who Dolphin fans should remember from week 3, because he was the one who got that pick late in the game when the Dolphins, trailing by 7, were apparently driving for a game-tying touchdown, potentially a game-winning touchdown had they scored, and decided to go for 2. So there are a lot of injuries to monitor from the Buffalo side ahead of this matchup, along with the letdown factor, because they're coming off a big win against the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that they've been trying to overtake to get to the Super Bowl. But we get more into that later in the week. So for the Dolphins, again, Douglas Eskridge, Melifonwu, Robinson. If Melifonwu can't play, we're looking at Ashton Davis being back in the lineup, and he would start again, as he's done so many times this year. If both of them are out, then logic would say the other only 2 safeties on the roster, along with Minkah Fitzpatrick, would be Dante Trader Jr., and it would be Elijah Campbell. I would suspect maybe they would give Dante Trader Jr. the start, considering how highly they have spoken about him repeatedly. And for the most part, he's actually done a decent job. And when it comes to Dolphin rookies, he's been trying to think. He's been solid. Because if you look, in fact, I did mid-season awards on the website, MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com, and coming up with a rookie of the year was very difficult because the Dolphins don't have any rookie free agents on the roster. And if you look at the 8 draft picks, Kenneth Grant, Jonas Avainaya, Jordan Phillips, Dante Trader Jr., Jason Marshall Jr., Ollie Gordon II, Quinn Ewers, Zeke Biggers. Not much impact there. Some players have had their moments at times. Mainly Kenneth Grant has had some moments. Jordan Phillips has had some moments. Dante Trader has had some moments. But Gordon has had some moments. Overall, though, it's not been particularly impressive as a group. Okay. Let's move on to Tua. In light of the NFL Network report over the weekend that basically suggested that Tua was playing for his job or to avoid getting benched, a couple of things. Tua was asked about this at his weekly media session on Wednesday, and he kind of prefaced his answer by saying the obligatory, I don't follow social media, so I didn't know. All I'll say about that is most players, if not every player, is aware of what's being said and written about that. That's all I'll say about that. And then he talked about, no, that's not how he views it. He's basically trying to do his job and helping the team win, and which is exactly what you would suggest he would say. And now, I want to dive into the semantics of it, though, a little bit for a second. Playing to avoid, has to perform to not get benched. Well, here's the thing. If the Dolphins season continues to go off the rails, and of course the question is going to be, well, how much more could it go off the rails? If they stop being competitive on a weekly basis, now it's 2 of the past 3 weeks where the performances have been bad. Cleveland and Baltimore. And even at that, we could make the argument that Baltimore was competitive in the first half, even though it was pretty sloppy from an operational standpoint for the Dolphins, and it was sandwiched around a very good performance against Atlanta. But if we get to the point where the Dolphins, let's say, have 2 or 3 of these performances like that in a row, then logically it would mean that Tua hasn't played well, and then logically it would mean that the Dolphins are in full looking ahead mode to 2026. And if that happens, and again, this is where Mike McDaniel's job status always has to get taken into account, because again, as long as he stays on the job, if he's not been told definitively one way or the other what his status is going to be after 2025, whether Stephen Russ has told him, I got you, you're coming back next year, I want to see this through, or if he's been told you're done at the end of the season, but I want to let you, I want to see you finish it out. Unless one of those 2 scenarios has occurred and there's still uncertainty about McDaniel's job status, then Mike McDaniel's number one focus is and should be winning games and having the team stay competitive week in and week out. And I don't know that I see a time when that would not entail having Tua as a starting quarterback, because I haven't seen enough from Quinn Ewers or Zach Wilson to suggest to me that whatever we want to say about Tua, either one would be an upgrade. But under the circumstances where the decision already has been made and conveyed to Mike McDaniel, and the Dolphins at some point now either stop being competitive or they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, I will maintain, I've said this before, and I will maintain it would behoove the Dolphins to see what Quinn Ewers does in regular season game situations, other than the garbage time snaps he got against the Cleveland Browns at the end of week 8 when the Dolphins were down 31-6. That was helpful, but not nearly as helpful as, let's say, him going through the prep an entire week, getting a start and seeing, okay, let's see what we have. Not that it would give you the full picture of what Quinn Ewers can become, but it would provide better clues than what the Dolphins have right now. And the truth about Tua, again, also is, no, the performances have not been as consistent as they've been in the past. The numbers aren't there. Too many interceptions, although some of them, again, the one against the Chargers that goes through Jalen Wallace's hands, the one at the end of the game when they basically need a miracle. Those are, and certainly not to excuse all of them, because I think me, that's not really where I go with this. But again, his performances, he's had his moments as well. That's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Which leads me to the next topic here that I've seen now at 3 different places. This idea, this light bulb that has gone over the head of some folks. And the last one I saw was the Athletic suggesting this. a Kyler Murray for Tua Tagovailoa swap next offseason. And I would imagine there were financial considerations that maybe need to be addressed from one side or the other, but purely from a player-to-player standpoint, no. If the point is strictly to get rid of Tua's contract, I think the Dolphins would just be better off moving on from him and swallowing hard and taking the cap hit. Kyler Murray is, Arizona's kind of in the same boat with Kyler Murray in that they gave him a very, very big contract and it's not panned out, in that the performances have been very inconsistent. When he's on, dude looks like he's like a pinball in the backfield with his running ability, and he can create plays all over the place. But the passing is very inconsistent, and that's become a problem for them. And now he's injured. He's going on IR. Went on IR on Wednesday. And before that, there was a suggestion that what was going on in Arizona, where the new starter is, you all ready for this? If you don't know, Dolphin fans, Jacoby Brissett, that this was a quote unquote soft benching of Kyler Murray. So then my point becomes again, why would the Dolphins want to sign up for that? It's not like he has a small contract either. Tua's contract, we all know, is egregious. So I've seen the suggestion brought out. I don't care for it. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, but not going to be me who's going to make that decision. As I've said before, I'm going to say it again. My strongest suspicion is that it's going to be Tua Tagovailoa as a starting quarterback in 2026 with Mike McDaniel as the head coach and very possibly Champ Kelly as a general manager. But that's for down the line. Right now, the Dolphins have begun their preparations for Buffalo in Week 10 at Hard Rock Stadium. And it's just a very, very weird feeling because everything built up to the trade deadline with the Dolphins. What are they going to do? Which players are they going to unload? And the reporting now is that, depending on who you believe, the Dolphins were either asking for a first-round pick for Jalen Waddle or a first-round pick plus other things. Didn't get either one of them. They did not move him. And from this standpoint, it made zero sense to move him for the reasons I've said many times before. He's only going to be 27 when he celebrates his birthday in November. He's still very, very productive in his contract, 11.7 cap hit in 2026. No guaranteed money after that. So if the Dolphins wanted to move on from him at that point, they easily could, either via trade, you let him be. You can let him leave via free agency at that point, or they could restructure his contract if they wanted to hang on to him. Moving Jalen Waddle would have been a clear sign that the Dolphins are embarking on a 2-3 year rebuild. And this is not what I see. This is not like the New York Jets, because that's what they're doing with the trades of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams for, in the case of Gardner, it was 2 first-round picks, one in each of the next 2 years, along with wide receiver A.D. Mitchell. And in the case of Quinnen Williams, it's a second-round pick next year, first-round pick in 2027, which is going to give the Jets 5 first-round picks over the next 2 drafts. And we all know how that turned out for the Dolphins when they had 5 first-round picks over 2 drafts, 2020 and 2021, and they got Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Jackson, Noah Benogany, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Phillips. And out of those 5 players, 1 Pro Bowl appearance, that was Tua in 2023. And I would make the argument that not one of those players is a top 10 player at his position in the NFL. And Noah Benogany was a bust, was gone after, 2 years? And then Austin Jackson has been oft injured, has been solid when he's been in the lineup. Jalen Waddle's been a very good wide receiver, not 6th overall pick, good wide receiver. And what happened there again is Dolphins, after moving down from 3 to 12 to pick up 2 future number 1 picks, which was a fabulous trade, then went from 12 to 6, surrendered one of those 2 future number 1 picks, which is not a move I really like, especially when you see what was available at number 12. Number 12 pick that year was Micah Parsons. And the Dolphins also flubbed it by not taking Penei Sewell instead at number 7. And then Jalen Phillips was a solid outside of the injury issues, was a solid edge defender. Not necessarily a great player, solid. And we'll see what happens to him. By the way, he's wearing number 50 for those who care. Number 50 with the Philadelphia Eagles, where he will have his first practice logically on Thursday because they have a Monday night game against the Green Bay Packers, and we'll be keeping an eye on what Jalen does. So this notion, my big point about this though is yes, the Jets are in full rebuild, and I see some alarmists on social media like the Dolphins are not only falling behind Buffalo, which they already were, and New England based on their emergence this season, but also now behind the Jets because they have all this draft capital, to which I would say, well, let's lower horses. Number one is it's great to have all that draft capital, but you have to hit on it, number one. And then number two, they still don't have a quarterback. And if the idea is they're going to draft one very early in the draft, all I'll say is I know the people involved are not the same, but their top 5 pick history at quarterback is Zach Wilson, Mark Sanchez, and Sam Darnold. So we shall take that for what it's worth. But in the meantime, the Dolphins again it almost feels like they're playing out the stretch with 8 games left. It's really, really a depressing state of affairs. And I know a lot of Dolphin fans want them to keep losing. From where I sit, I wouldn't mind them going on a run, not under the illusion that they're going to make the playoffs because they're not going to make the playoffs, but just to watch some decent football and see them being competitive as opposed to, the stuff we saw against Cleveland and against Baltimore. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. As always, again, please like, comment, share. If I haven't said this before, I appreciate each and every one of you who tune in and click to watch and listen to my gibberish. Hopefully you get something out of it. And also I would greatly appreciate it if you guys checked out the website, MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com. And for those, again, who prefer the audio podcast, wherever you get your audio podcast, look for the All Dolphins podcast. You shall find it. We will be back here on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.